What if I told you the company that invented the digital camera was also the same company that helped destroy it? At its peak, Kodak controlled nearly 90% of the world's film photography, a single company that captured the memories of an entire planet. From family photos to Hollywood films to war, and then it collapsed. Not because they couldn't innovate, but because they invented the future too early and refused to use it. This is the story of Kodak. To understand Kodak, we need to go back to 1888. A man named George Eastman wasn't a photographer, he was a banker, but he saw a problem that almost no one else cared about at the time. Back then, photography was slow, expensive, and extremely complicated. You needed glass plates, carefully mixed chemicals, and professional knowledge just to capture a single image. For most people, photography simply wasn't accessible. It was not a tool for everyday life. It was a craft reserved for experts, and Eastman believed that had to change. He started asking a simple question: what if taking a photograph could be as easy as pressing a button? So in 1888, he introduced something that would completely reshape the industry: the Kodak camera, a small simple device preloaded with film, enough for 100 photographs. And once you used them all, you didn't need to develop anything yourself. You didn't need chemicals or a lab or technical knowledge. You simply sent the entire camera back to Kodak, and they handled everything: film development, printing, reloading, everything. Their slogan captured it perfectly: you press the button, we do the rest. And for the first time in history, photography stopped being complex. It became effortless. But that was only the beginning, because a few years later, Kodak made an even bigger move. In 1900, they released a camera that changed everything again: the Brownie camera, a device so simple and so cheap. It cost just $1, and suddenly, photography was no longer limited to professionals or enthusiasts. It became something anyone could own: children, families, ordinary people who had never even touched a camera before. And what happened next was completely unexpected. People didn't just take photographs occasionally. They started documenting everything: daily life, birthdays, vacations, simple moments that had never been preserved before. Kodak didn't just sell a product, it created an entirely new behavior in human life. But behind this simplicity was a highly controlled system, because Kodak didn't only sell cameras, it controlled the entire ecosystem: film production, processing laboratories, chemicals, printing systems. Every single photo taken meant more film consumed, more processing required, and more recurring revenue flowing back into Kodak. It was a closed loop, a system designed to grow with every memory captured, one of the most powerful business models ever created. And as the 20th century began, Kodak didn't just expand, it quietly became the global standard for photography, not just in one country, but across the entire world. By the mid-20th century, Kodak was no longer just a company, it was the center of global photography. At its peak, Kodak controlled around 80 to 90% of all film sales in the United States and dominated markets across the entire world. Everywhere you looked, Kodak was there. Family photos, newspapers, Hollywood films, even military reconnaissance. If an image existed in the 20th century, there is a high chance Kodak film captured it. But what made Kodak truly powerful wasn't just its dominance, it was its business model. Film wasn't a one-time purchase, it was consumable. Every photo taken meant more film sold, more chemicals, more development, more profit. A perfect machine of recurring revenue, long before Silicon Valley even gave it a name. By this point, Kodak wasn't competing anymore. It was the industry standard. The system itself had become the market. But inside its own labs, something else was happening. In 1975, an engineer at Kodak named Steven Sasson built something strange. It was bulky, low resolution, and completely unlike anything the company had ever seen before. It was the world's first digital camera. No film, no chemicals, no physical processing, just electronic images a glimpse of the future, built inside Kodak itself. But when it was presented to leadership, it was not celebrated. It was questioned, because this invention didn't strengthen Kodak's business. It threatened it. So instead of pushing forward, Kodak did what most dominant companies eventually do. It protected what was already working: film. And in that moment, Kodak had already invented the future of photography and chosen not to use it. For decades, Kodak looked untouchable, a company that had defined photography for an entire century. But beneath the surface, the world was beginning to change, slowly at first, then all at once. In the 1990s, a new technology began to emerge: digital photography. At first, it seemed insignificant, low quality, expensive, and unreliable compared to film. But it was improving fast, and with every passing year, film became slightly less essential, almost unnoticeable at first, but irreversible over time. Inside Kodak, this created a dangerous internal conflict because Kodak was not just a photography company, it was a film company. Film was its core business, its profit engine, its identity. And digital photography was not just an innovation, it was a direct threat to everything Kodak was built on. So the company tried to do something almost impossible. It tried to protect its film business while also building its digital future. It launched digital cameras, it invested in printers, it created online photo platforms. On paper, it looked like adaptation, but in reality, every step forward into digital was also a step away from its own foundation, because the more successful digital became, the more it destroyed film, and film was still the source of most of Kodak's profit. So internally, the company hesitated, carefully, slowly, reluctantly. And while Kodak was balancing between two worlds, the world continued moving on without it. By the early 2000s, digital cameras became cheaper than ever, good enough for everyday use, no longer a novelty, but a standard. And then came something even more disruptive: the smartphone, a device that didn't just take photos. It replaced cameras entirely. Suddenly, photography was no longer a separate industry. It was embedded into a device everyone already carried. No film, no printing, no Kodak. Demand collapsed, not gradually, but structurally. And Kodak found itself trapped. It had built the world of photography, but it could no longer control where it was going. The decline of Kodak did not happen overnight. It happened slowly. And then suddenly, throughout the 2000s, film sales kept falling, year after year. Factories that once ran at full capacity started shutting down. Entire divisions were cut. Thousands of employees were laid off. But inside the company, there was still hope. Kodak kept trying to reinvent itself. It pushed deeper into digital cameras. It invested in printing technology. It tried to build a future beyond film. But the problem was not effort, it was timing. By the time Kodak fully committed to digital, the market had already moved on. Competition was everywhere. And worse, smartphones had arrived. Companies like Apple and others didn't just improve photography, they eliminated the need for cameras altogether. Suddenly, Kodak was no longer competing with camera companies. It was competing with a device people already carried in their pocket every day, and that battle was already lost. Revenue collapsed, debt grew, assets were sold, and a company that once defined global photography was now struggling to survive. A company that once captured the memories of the world could no longer afford its own future. Kodak is often remembered as a company that failed, but that is not the full story. For more than a century, it stood as one of the most successful companies in history. It didn't just sell cameras, it defined how humanity captured memory itself. But its downfall reveals something far more important. Innovation is not just about invention, it is about timing. Kodak did not ignore the future, it actually helped create it. It invented the digital camera. It understood exactly where photography was heading. But then came a decision that many dominant companies eventually face. It chose to protect what was already working. Its film business was too valuable, too profitable, too important to abandon. And that decision created a conflict that could not be resolved, because sometimes the very thing that makes a company powerful is the same thing that prevents it from changing. Kodak also shows that disruption does not arrive gently. It does not wait for permission. It replaces entire industries. Film did not slowly fade away. It collapsed under a new reality, one where photography became instant, digital, and eventually built into every smartphone on Earth. The lesson is simple. Being first is not enough. Being right is not enough. The only thing that matters is whether you can move fast enough to survive what comes next. Because in the end, even the greatest companies are not immune to the future. They are only as strong as their willingness to change with it.